It started with a single pair of shoes. Not a billion-dollar idea, not a flashy business plan, just a desperate, dirt-poor teenager, a broken sewing machine, and a stench that would make most Americans gag today. That teenager was so broke he couldn't afford a loaf of bread. Yet within his lifetime, he would build a company worth over $20 billion. A company that would dress your kids, your favorite NBA superstars, and even pop culture icons like Run DMC. But here's the twist that nobody sees coming. The real reason Adidas is worth $20 billion today has almost nothing to do with shoes, and everything to do with a betrayal so deep, so personal, that it split a family, tore a town apart, and created the single greatest rivalry in business history. A rivalry you've probably worn on your feet without even knowing it. Stay with me, because this story changes how you look at every single sneaker you own from now on. Let's go back to a place you've probably never heard of, a tiny town in Bavaria, Germany, called Herzogenaurach. And no, this isn't a history lesson, it's a horror story about survival. The year is 1918. World War I has just ended. Germany is shattered. The economy is so destroyed that American families back home were reading headlines about hyperinflation, where people burned cash for warmth because it was cheaper than buying firewood. For a young German cobbler named Adolf Dassler, life wasn't just hard, it was hopeless. His family had nothing. His father worked in a shoe factory, his mother washed clothes for wealthy neighbors, and young Adolf, his friends called him Adi, slept on a floor made of dirt. I'm talking dirt poor, the kind of poor that makes the struggles of a modern struggling American family in Ohio or rural Kentucky look like a vacation. But Adi had an obsession. While other kids played, he took apart shoes. He studied the leather, the stitching, the soles. He noticed that the shoes people wore in 1920 were basically leather bags for your feet. Terrible for sports, terrible for work, and worse for your back. So after his mother's death left the family even more desperate, Adi made a move that would either save them or starve them. He commandeered his mother's old washroom, a tiny, cold space with no electricity, no running water, and a smell of lye and fatigue, and he built a pair of shoes. Not just any shoes, he built the first pair of performance sneakers. But here's the kicker. Nobody wanted them, because in 1920s Germany, nobody had money, and certainly no American dollar bills were floating into Bavaria. Adi was about to quit. He was one bad week away from losing everything. And then something happened that changed his destiny. The 1928 Amsterdam Olympics. You see, Adi realized that if he could get an athlete to wear his shoes, and that athlete won, suddenly poor German cobblers become heroes. But he had no money, no connections, no marketing budget like a Nike or a Reebok, which didn't even exist yet. What he had was grit. He scraped together enough leather to make a few pairs of spiked running shoes, and he literally walked, yes, walked hundreds of miles to Amsterdam. He stood outside the Olympic Stadium like a homeless vendor, holding up his shoes to any athlete who would look. Most ignored him. One didn't. A German runner named Lena Radke. She took a pair, she ran the 800 meters, and she won gold. Suddenly, a single photograph went across German newspapers, a champion wearing Adidas shoes. That one moment took Adolf Dassler from starving cobbler to local legend. But here's where most YouTube videos stop telling the real story, because success didn't save Adi, it destroyed his family. You see, Adi had an older brother, Rudolf Dassler. Rudy was the smooth one, the salesman, the charmer. While Adi was the quiet, obsessive craftsman toiling in the dark, Rudy was the guy who could sell ice to an Eskimo. In the early 1930s, the two brothers formed a partnership, Gebrüder Dassler Schuhfabrik, Dassler Brothers Shoe Factory, and for a few years it worked beautifully. Adi made the shoes, Rudy sold them. By 1936, they had convinced American Olympic hero Jesse Owens to wear their spikes. Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals in Berlin wearing Adidas spikes right in front of Adolf Hitler. And just like that, the Dassler brothers became millionaires. In 1930s Germany, that was like being Elon Musk today. But then came World War II, and the war didn't just bomb buildings, it bombed trust. Here's the part that will make you gasp. Both brothers joined the Nazi Party, like most German industrialists did to survive. But during the war, their factory was converted to produce weapons. And as Allied bombs fell on Herzogenaurach in 1943, Adi and Rudi hid together in a concrete bunker. And one night, an Allied plane flew overhead. Adi looked up and shouted, "The dirty bastards are here again." He was talking about the American pilots, but Rudi, terrified and paranoid, thought Adi had called him a dirty bastard. That misunderstanding, that single sentence spoken in fear, turned brother against brother. After the war, the Americans occupied Bavaria. Both brothers were arrested for their Nazi ties, but here's the betrayal. Each brother accused the other of being the real Nazi. Rudi told the Americans, "Arrest Adi, he was the true believer." Adi told the Americans, "No, arrest Rudi, he was an SS officer." They both got out, short imprisonments, but they never spoke again, not one word, for the rest of their lives. In a small town of 5,000 people, the Dassler feud became so toxic that the town split in two, the Adi side of the river and the Rudi side. Bakers wouldn't serve customers wearing the wrong brother's shoes. Kids on playgrounds beat each other up over a shoe brand. This is not a metaphor. This actually happened in Herzogenaurach. Americans think the Hatfield and McCoys were intense. The Dassler brothers literally created two global corporations just to destroy each other. In 1949, the brothers officially split the company. Adi took one half, Rudi took the other. Adi named his company Adidas, short for Adi Dassler. Rudi named his company Ruda, short for Rudolf Dassler. But Rudi was a salesman, not a cobbler. He changed the name, and that name was Puma. That's right, the $10 billion sportswear giant Puma was born entirely out of brotherly hatred. From that moment forward, Adidas versus Puma became the Coke versus Pepsi of the athletic world. But Adi had one weapon Rudi could never beat: obsession. Adi Dassler was a freak for detail. While Rudi focused on marketing and making shoes look cool, Adi went to soccer fields with a notebook and watched how players' feet moved. He noticed that players kept falling because their cleats were heavy and slippery on wet grass. So in 1952, Adi invented the first screw-in studs. That's right, replaceable cleats. That was an Adidas innovation. Then in 1954, the miracle happened, the moment that sealed Adidas's fate forever. The 1954 FIFA World Cup final in Bern, Switzerland. It was raining so hard the field was a swamp. The Hungarian national team, called the Mighty Magyars, had not lost a game in 4 years. They were playing West Germany, a team nobody believed in. But the German players were wearing Adidas boots with screw-in studs, and not just any studs. Adi made longer, special studs for wet conditions. He sat in the locker room before the game, personally screwing studs into every player's boots. The Hungarians wore standard slippery shoes. The result? The biggest upset in soccer history. West Germany won 3-2, and the world watched Adidas boots lift the World Cup trophy. Overnight, Adidas became synonymous with winning. By 1960, every American athlete who went to the Olympics wanted Adidas. Every American high school track star saved up lawn mowing money, $20, $30 a pair, just to wear the 3 stripes. But here's the mindset shift you came here for, the thing that separates Adidas from every other faceless brand you buy at DSW or Foot Locker. Adi Dassler never cared about being rich, he cared about being right. While his brother Rudi focused on image and sex appeal, Puma was the cool brand in the 1970s, worn by Pele and Joe Frazier. Adi focused on engineering. He built the first shoes with torsion soles. He built the first kangaroo leather soccer boots. He was so obsessed that he once stayed up for 48 hours straight just to hand-stitch a pair of shoes for a single athlete he'd never met. That athlete's name was Muhammad Ali. Ali wore Adidas in the Rumble in the Jungle against George Foreman. Adi wasn't there for the money. He was there because he believed a better shoe makes a better athlete. And that philosophy, obsessive, neurotic, painful perfectionism, is why Adidas now sits at a $20 billion market cap. But wait, you might be thinking, okay, cool story, but how did a small German shoe company become a $20 billion American obsession? Because the real money wasn't made on soccer fields in Europe, it was made in the housing projects of New York.
In the 1980s, something unexpected happened. Adidas was nearly bankrupt. Puma was eating their lunch. Nike, started by a guy named Phil Knight, who literally sold Japanese shoes out of his car at track meets in Oregon, was crushing both of them with the Air Jordan. Adidas was seen as old, tired, European, soccer dad shoes. Nobody in America wanted them. Then a small hip-hop group from Queens, New York, named Run DMC, did something insane. In 1986, they wrote a song called My Adidas, and it wasn't sponsored. Adidas didn't pay them a dime. Run DMC just loved the superstar sneaker, the shell toe, because it had no laces, it was tough, and you could wear it in the Bronx without them falling apart. The song exploded. Kids from Detroit to Atlanta to Compton started shelling out $45 for Adidas superstars. Adidas corporate in Germany had no idea what was happening. They thought it was a mistake, until Run DMC showed up to a packed concert at Madison Square Garden and at the height of the song held up their Adidas sneakers and told the entire crowd, "Hold your Adidas in the air." 20,000 kids raised their shoes. An Adidas executive in the audience started crying, real tears, because he realized a bunch of broke kids from the Bronx understood the brand better than the German boardroom ever did. Adidas signed Run DMC to a $1 million endorsement deal, the first ever hip-hop endorsement in sneaker history. And just like that, Adidas went from bankrupt to cool. But here's the high-stakes lesson for any American entrepreneur watching this. Adidas almost blew it. They almost lost the American market forever because they didn't listen. In the 1990s, Nike and Reebok dominated with puffier, basketball-focused shoes. Adidas stuck to soccer and running. Sales tanked. They lost $100 million in 1 year. By 1993, the bank was calling. Adidas was worth less than $500 million. They were a week away from being sold to a Chinese knockoff company. Then, a French-born corporate fixer named Robert Louis Dreyfus, yeah, that Dreyfus, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's cousin, took over. He did one thing differently. He said, "Stop trying to compete with Nike on performance, compete with them on cool." He brought in hip-hop icons, launched the Impossible is Nothing campaign, and sold the company to the public on the stock exchange. By 1997, Adidas was back. By 2005, they bought Reebok for $3.8 billion just to spite Nike. And today, Adidas is worth over $20 billion. But here's the emotional punch you didn't expect. All that money, all that success, and two brothers died without ever speaking again. Adi Dassler died in 1978. Rudolf died a year later in 1979. They are buried in the same cemetery in Herzogenaurach. Their graves are separated by exactly 100 feet. And to this day, no one in the Dassler family will talk about the fight. But the feud created something bigger than a shoe brand. It created a mindset. You see, when you buy a pair of Adidas today, the Ultra Boost, the Samba, the Yeezy, before Kanye got canceled, you aren't buying a shoe. You're buying a 100-year war, a war between obsession and charisma, between the craftsman and the salesman, between two brothers who couldn't share a bunker and accidentally built two global empires. So the next time you see a kid in the USA paying $200 for a pair of limited edition Adidas sneakers, remember this: that price tag isn't about leather, rubber, or brand hype. It's about a poor German teenager who refused to quit, a betrayal whispered in a dark bunker, a community torn in half by shoelaces, and a moment in 1954 when 11 men wore the right shoes in the rain and changed sports history forever. Adidas is worth $20 billion today, not because they make the best shoes. They're worth $20 billion because the story of those shoes forces you to pick a side. Are you a creator or are you a salesman? Are you an Adi or are you a Rudy? The answer to that question will determine whether your own legacy, your business, your family, your net worth ends in a $20 billion victory or a 100-foot silent cemetery.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into the sneaker war that built a billion-dollar empire, then you need to watch our next video, How Nike Stole Its Best Idea from a Janitor. Trust me, you won't look at a pair of Air Force Ones the same way. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because on Brand Story Lab, we don't just talk about money, we talk about the blood, sweat, and betrayal behind the logos you wear every single day. I'll see you in the next story. Peace.